Turn the meeting of the AIMHI Reimbursement Committee over to someone who needs no introduction, the illustrious Brian Choate.
Hey guys, good afternoon. Want to first say thank you to the Academy for this award I've been selected to receive. No, it's good to be with you guys today. It has been over 10 years since I've connected with you guys. I think it was in Florida last time. So I want to say thanks for the opportunity for the association for having me here. And really what I wanted to do is just kind of share a few thoughts with you, a little bit about some best practices with RCM. If I've not met you, my name is Brian Choate, and I am the co-founder and one of the managing partners here at Solutions Group Services. Joined with my business partner, Asbel Montez. Some of you guys might know Asbel. We're celebrating our 11th year, and really we were a EMS born and bred technology and services company. And really have a lot of passion about what you guys do and some of the unique challenges that you face in your RCM process. And really it's about putting the patient first, right? And how can we leverage process or technology to make sure that our patients are receiving a bill from us as a last possible resort. So we are Solutions Group. If you don't know us, we're a technology and services company. And pretty much every solution that we have created around the RCM process is really geared around just that. It's identifying either insurance rather than having to bill patients, or we're trying to get more from our claims by avoiding high deductibles, and kind of a host of solutions and consulting services and things that we've put together to help. So feel free to learn more about us at solutionsgroup.com. Well, let's jump in. I think it is safe to say that the complexities of EMS billing have not become any less laborious than ever. In fact, I think our challenges continue to grow. Average deductibles right now are at $1,735. That's forcing us to try to have to collect from patients when we happen to bill insurance before the facilities do. We know that the growth in your Medicare Advantage plans are continuing to push cost sharing back to our patients in the form of copays. I was on with a client of ours yesterday in Michigan. It told me about a payer that had a $350 copay on an Advantage plan. And these things seem to be discontinuing as more and more beneficiaries are being moved to the Advantage plans. It's just continuing to add more and more challenges to what we do on the RCM side. And of course, last but not least, the changes to the credit agency reporting criteria. A lot of your agencies now are no longer allowing us to go in and put medical debt on a patient's credit report if your organization does that. Sometimes we feel like that was the stick. We like the carrot. The carrot's the good service we provide in EMS, but the stick is that you need to properly, reimburse us for at least your cost sharing, for the services we provided for the family. So these challenges continue to come and hit, and payers continue to change. I have a motto for healthcare. I said the hidden challenge is we've got to do more with less. Seems like there's less and less office furniture, there's less and less clothes on our back, and there's continual challenges. And what we really wanted to do was talk a little bit about, we know we're unlikely to see more funding. Right, the current administration has targeted some $800 billion reduction in healthcare spend, I believe, over the next 10 years. And so really, in order to try to achieve more with less is going to continue to be the mantra that we look at. And so where do we focus on that? First, we want to talk a little bit about focusing on where we can cut down on on outdated manual processes. Seems like there's a lot of FTE hours go into our processes as we work with clients across the country. And a lot of times manual processes were really created as a byproduct of fixing some type of exception. And so a lot of times the rules we're making or the processes we're building to address exceptions end up causing a clog in our billing offices. And then to achieve more with less, we want to talk a little bit about streamlining our processes and layering in automation, machine learning, maybe some outsourcing or hybrid outsourcing models, and maybe some ways you can leverage technology to help assist in this continual cycle of having to add more and more FTEs and more headcount to our billing organizations. Instead, could we maybe leverage technology and find out how do you make that work? And then lastly, to regain efficiencies by focusing on your most precious resources. That's our people, our pre-billers, our verifiers. Can we possibly focus them just on working exceptions What we call exceptions-based pre-billing says essentially where you want to use automation and technology to, if it's the 80-20 rule, to let automation fix the 80%. And then let's leave those exceptions for our pre-billers and verifiers, where we actually need somebody with experience and somebody who knows the why behind your process. I think to get here, we have to challenge our assumptions. I think we have to look at our processes and challenge, is it working like we think it is? Albert Einstein had a quote, and he said, when we all think alike, no one thinks very much. I don't know if you've heard that before, but it seems like with small teams, a lot of times there's a danger in this psychological phenomenon called groupthink. And groupthink's defined as opting to conform with the consensus view rather than engaging in critical thinking. I don't know if you've ever heard this expression said once. If I've heard it once, I've heard it 1,000 times, is this is the way that we've always done it. And if we're asking why a process is done as in a specific way, or hey, why do you do these steps? Why is this manual? Why is this? Why is that? If the quickest answer we get is this is the way we've always done it, I think it's masking some potential opportunities where we can grow and improve in our process. And so that's what we wanted to kind of guide you through a little bit today. I'm from the South. I'm a simple country boy. There's an expression that we've always used here, and basically, my wife could tell you I'm probably a master of this. When we're too quick to assume, we can obviously make a fool of ourselves and you for being part of it. And so I wanted to kind of go over 3 assumptions that I want you guys just to think through and maybe challenge your process with it. First challenge is that your system works as it's designed. A lot of times questioning this will drive innovation in your billing practices, such as maybe adopting new technologies or revisiting outdated policies that might have been put in place 2, 3, 4 years ago to fix a certain issue. Maybe the issue has been outdated. It's no longer an issue, but there might be manual processes or manual touches that your billing team is having to perform and just work in that outdated policy that's there. Sometimes I find that solutions that you might have visited or maybe looked into some years ago may have failed. It was a matter of timing. And maybe now, new day, new challenges, sometimes maybe getting off some old plans or old innovations that your organization maybe had worked up, maybe getting those back out and saying, hey, could this be the time we might maybe look at a hybrid outsource, or maybe we look at this process to say, could we layer in some automation or make a change in our billing software? What can we do to get more efficient without continuing to add more and more FTEs to the process? Assumption number 2 is we want to challenge, we can do it ourselves. The answer to this is yes, we obviously can do it ourselves. We're smart. As an industry, we are go-getters. We know how to pivot logistics better than almost, I think, any other sector of healthcare. This is what EMS knows. But the question I always ask is, should we be doing it ourselves? Technically, I don't have to buy paper from Staples or Office Depot. Right? Technically, I can grow a tree, I could mill paper, I could create my own paper, but I'm not in the paper business, right? And so the cost and the time involved of sometimes trying to handle all the processes ends up running up your cost, ends up causing clogs in your workflows. And so I say, in order to identify potential new strategies for improving your efficiencies and lowering your cost, it's important to really understand your cost per claim. That's when you look across the life of your claim from the moment the EPCR comes in your system until you have coded payments and close the account out. There's a cost associated to each step in the process. And when we really understand your cost per claim, now it gives you the ability to really read your ROI. You can answer questions like, does this make sense potentially to outsource as a part of your process? Would it maybe make sense to use automation for this piece and then now let my pre-billers, my verifiers focus on exceptions rather than this monotonous, steps, working websites, looking information up, calling patients, maybe layering some other technologies or strategies in place. But if you know your cost per claim, that can help lead your strategy to get that done. So what I want to do is tell you guys a little bit more about some of our technology solutions here at Solutions Group. And I'm proud to say here in the room, there's 5 or 6 different clients we already have. They're using one or more of our solutions here. And so just going to kind of take you at a high level through our processes and what it is that our technologies bring to EMS. I always like to start and say this, that we are not here to topple your tower. Solutions Group, our focus is really working behind your existing processes. If you have vendor partners in place for part of what we do or all of what we do, Solutions Group offers to come in behind and maybe validate that the process is working like it's supposed to. Maybe there's missed billing opportunities that are simply getting skipped because there's too much automation in place. And we'll take you through some of those caveats today. So I'll jump in first, talk a little bit about deductible management. The idea of holding for deductible is certainly not new. Most providers have at least looked at the beginning part of the year with their Medicare claims, thinking every year on January 1st, deductibles reset. We know that the first provider who happens to bill a patient's insurance for that calendar year, you're the lucky one who gets to now go after the patient and try to collect that deductible from the patient. Average deductibles right now on commercial claims are over $1,700. This trend has continued to go up year after year. I will say it's nice. We got a little bit of a reprieve last year. I think average deductibles dropped by $22, $23. So woohoo. But the point is, when you're transporting patients, because EMS typically bills insurance faster than hospitals and the facilities do, for that reason, our charges end up getting applied to the patient's unmet deductible. And now, rather than just focused on the patient care and getting them where they needed to go, now we're having to almost become a collection agency and now try to collect for deductibles. If I'm a patient and when I receive a bill for deductible, though it is my deductible and it's my insurance plan that I took from my employer, what happens when I see that amount that I have to pay? My thought process almost immediately goes to, why are you charging me so much? Why is it that an ambulance transport is a $1,500 or $1,600 charge when I can take Uber for $50? Now, everyone on the call, I know your hair stands up when I say it. I agree with you. The general consumer does not understand the cost of preparedness. They don't understand what's involved with having a medic and an EMT and a $400,000 ambulance or $600,000 ambulance to your house in 8.5 minutes, right? That cost of preparedness, the general consumer doesn't understand. So the best service we can provide our patient is to be there in a time of need, safely transport them, and they never hear from us again because we're able to get paid directly from their insurance rather than having to bill them for their deductibles. So deductible management, the way our solution works is we're the last stop in the billing process. So before a provider bills out a claim to the clearinghouse or to the payer, we're the last stop in that, and we simply go point to point with the payer. And I'm just looking to find out, is there a deductible remaining for the service you provided? If it's not, you don't need me. And so we set our system to release the claim directly back to you. Where I'm focused on are on the claims that if you bill that deductible, you're going to end up getting hit. If you bill that insurance, you're going to end up getting hit by deductible and have to try to collect part or all of your payment directly from your patient. So instead, we move those into a real-time monitoring queue, and we monitor those, and we're watching to see as soon as the facility, the ER doc or another healthcare group, when they get their claim in and they adjudicate the claim, and now deductible has been satisfied, then we know it's time to release your claim. So essentially, it's creating a timing mechanism to make sure you're not the first provider group to bill the patient's insurance. We're in a unique position because Solutions Group, we manage over 6 million EMS claims a year for deductibles. And so we've got a lot of data that we're able to constantly be trending and looking to see what's changing. And I know when I bring up deductible management, potentially your organization might not have looked at this before. And the thought is, what's it going to do to our cash flow if we hold up all of our claims for a set amount of time period? Not surprised you to know that on average, only 17% of claims ever need to be held for deductible management. So the thought process is that if you're holding claims for a set amount of time, when you know that a lot of times a large percentage of those claims don't need to be held at all. So if you have a manual process of holding for 30 days or for 2 weeks, you might consider a strategy like this to say only hold what needs to be held. And then of that 17% that actually gets held throughout the year on average, 44% of it will fully meet its deductible in 90 days or less. 44% of it. That's 44% of those claims you're now not having to go back and try to bill the patient to collect that deductible. But also another 23% of that will partially mature during a 90-day monitoring period. What I mean by partially mature, think about an example like a ER doc. Maybe they got in a smaller claim, they billed the patient's insurance. Maybe half that deductible got met by that claim. So now you're getting something from insurance, and now you're collecting a smaller dollar amount from your patient. The smaller bill, the higher the pull through is on getting paid from patients when we do have to actually bill for deductible. And then the other 33% of those, frankly, we just don't see a lot of movement. Some of those were the deductibles were so large and the patient used their insurance once all year long. It certainly happens, but where we try to focus is on that 67% of the time where there's either full charges captured or partial charges captured simply by knowing the right time on when to avoid those deductibles and bill your claims out. I included in this just some information about a pilot that we did last year for a client where we took they put our solution in place. We made sure it was in place for January 1st to catch the calendar reset. And during this process, there were roughly 27,000 claims that came through our deductible management solution for this provider. We saw that 5,500 of those were commercial insurance and roughly 21,000 of those were Medicare. And rather than those claims getting billed out when they came into our system, we put them into a holding queue. And we monitored those for a maximum of 90 days. So each day, as we see that deductibles getting satisfied by the facility claim, we're then releasing those claims out of the system. The net back to the client was over $900,000 that they picked up directly from deductible. And said differently, that's payments that they did not have to go back after their patients for. They're able to hold it the right amount of time, not a day longer than they needed to, but then get paid directly from the insurance. So I just wanted to kind of include a little bit about how that pilot went and kind of give you a measuring stick for how deductible management can impact your operation. Next, I want to talk a little bit about insurance discovery. Insurance discovery is actually what brought me personally to the healthcare space in 2009. I went to work for an advocacy company in Fort Worth, Texas, where essentially they were going into the hospitals and simply trying to get patients enrolled on Medicaid or on disability. What they found in the process of doing that, it's lengthy. In a lot of states, getting a patient enrolled on the Medicaid rolls could take anywhere from 3 months to 4 months. And the issue with a lot of the billing entities were as pre-billers were looking to try to find insurance, there was not insurance available. But then later, 60, 90 days, 3, 4 months after the transport date, they got retroactive Medicaid. And so we originally created a solution just to identify, is there any type of billing opportunity that might have gotten missed because of a retro Medicaid that came in place afterward? Fast forward that to Solutions Group that we started in 2014. About 9 months in, they had the opportunity to go in and actually purchase that organization called Black Ink. Some of you may know the name. And so Black Ink became a staple in our Solutions Group product line. But then we took it and we injected steroids right into the arm on it. So rather than just trying to identify retroactive Medicaid, now we're taking your self-pay or basically accounts where you don't have any insurance information. And we were scrubbing those across hundreds of payer EDI connections, data warehouses, and data aggregators to identify if there's Medicaid, if there's Medicare, if there's an Advantage plan, as well as your private payers. I've got direct connections to Blue Cross. I've got Aetna, United Healthcare, Humana, long list. And essentially what happens is at the time where your team realizes there's no insurance information on the claim, either you've got to try to make patient contact, you've got to manually try to go to a couple of different websites, or there's other scrubbing solutions that might be built directly into your billing software that's going to check the top 10 or top 15 payers. What we like to advertise and say it loud and proud is on average, we find 58 unique insurances for every client that we work with. So if I said that differently, if some of the other solutions might look at the top 10 or 15 payers to see if there is insurance, on average, I find insurance from 58 unique insurances. It's a very comprehensive scrub. What it involves is taking basically the name, the date of birth, and the date of service and your address of the patient. I am taking those through a cleaning process directly to the credit agency. So I'm cleaning up the spelling of the name, the date of birth, potentially if the medic got it inverted, correcting the address information, bringing you an apartment number if you don't have it, but also can return the social security number if the other data elements match close enough. So we pull that back from the credit bureau. And then with the cleaned up demographics, now I launch into my discovery solution where there's a couple of hundred payer connections we're working our way through. We've created our own machine learning in the process of knowing where to go based on the age of the patient, based on what demographics you have available. We're moving to the Blue Cross system because it's the largest payer, and we kind of work our way to Medicaid if they're Medicare if they're age appropriate, Medicaid. We're finding Advantage plans as well as your national and local payers. Where our customers use the solution varies. We're not a one-stop shop. Some clients use us very early in the process where I'm an intricate part of the pre-bill stage. Other clients use me in the back. I'm simply just a safety net. My job is to look at the accounts that you're about to move to a write-off status. We run them through the same exact algorithms, scrub the same exact payers. If you use me early, on average, I'll find insurance on 46% of your accounts where you don't have a payer. I'll find a payer for you, as well as secondary payers. A lot of times we'll find Medicare. I'll find the Advantage plan, your Medicaid plan, and a secondary payer. Because the way our process works is we don't stop just because we found a payer. We continue to work all the EDI connections to make sure we've got a very comprehensive scrub for you. So if I scrub early, on average, 46% of the time, I'll find something for you. Or if I scrub late, I'll show you a case study here in a moment where we did some scrubbing behind a built-in scrubber in a billing system, and where we went in and identified payers on accounts that had already been scrubbed, but they didn't find insurance with that tool. But on average, I'll find coverage 18% of the time if I'm doing nothing but being your safety net. I'm just trying to keep you from moving an account to a write-off status. If there's a billing opportunity that I can identify electronically, bring you back all the pertinent billing information, bill what's billable, write off what's not. So just want to kind of give you a little bit of data around that. Here's a scrubbing pilot we did with a gentleman who happens to be in the room today and gave permission to share. Essentially, we went into a client in the New England area who they had an existing billing software that had a scrubber built into it. And so as they were doing data cleanup and doing payer discovery in that solution, any account that finished that process that still did not have a payer then moved into Solutions Group Q. We have an app we set up for the RescueNet system where we're able to pull the accounts directly out of the system. And we found coverage on 34% of the accounts that did not have coverage discovered in the early process. So of the 24,000 some odd accounts, we found insurance on 8,147 of those accounts over that year's period. So it just goes to show, as I mentioned earlier, no automation is perfect, right? Automation doesn't solve everything. So sometimes there's going to be billing opportunities. If the end of the process, if the difference is between going after the patient and trying to get them to pick up the phone and call you, or if we could instead leverage automation and technology to then go in and find the payer, verify it's active for the date of service, and then your team simply adds the payer, codes it, and bills the claim out, that's now adding efficiency back, rather than you having to manually crawl websites and make phone calls and call hospitals and try to get an updated face sheet, all those steps that we know. We know why we do that in EMS. We know why those manual touches fell into our process. But should we be revisiting some of those and maybe leveraging technologies and other options to help with that?
So on that one there, our rate has actually now subsequently gone up to 40% since Brian did that analysis. So we're up to 40% now that we're finding. Some of that is additional work that we have a specific team that's just assigned to do missing, right? And then they do a little bit of preliminary work trying to make sure that we're sending Brian a cleaner name, social, and date of birth. So that percentage has actually gone up to 40 now, where Brian has been able to find stuff that Insurance Discovery hasn't. And we're billing now for almost 200 different services across Massachusetts and New York, 400,000 trips, and our bill patient self-pay rate, if it starts getting north of, I mean, the pro self-pay rate is 5%. And if we start seeing that self-pay rate go anywheres north of 8, we start getting squirrely. And I think that's an expected result. I don't know that we can throw more at it or do better than that, honestly. But it's a combination of these things, and certainly the ROI on that is, ridiculous. We're in a, we have some connections where we can search directly with hospitals, but honestly, if we're not finding it through AR Boost, through Zoll, then Brian's folks get a shot at it. If we don't have a hospital connection, I am completely comfortable billing the patient, knowing that we have pretty much struck out. But our bill patient rate is really low without a lot of manual touches.
That's great feedback. Thank you for that, Bill. I didn't exactly know if I was going to call you out. Yeah, it's always good to hear your voice jump in.
Oh, I can jump in a lot. It's okay. Mhm.
All right, guys. So the last solution I just wanted to kind of talk you guys through has to do with our third-party liability discovery. So think about motor vehicle accidents or on-the-job injuries, workers' comp claims. In all of our insurance discovery solutions, those are focused on finding medical insurance that's active for the date of service. But when you've got an auto policy, this can be one of the or an auto accident. This can be one of the most litigious, processes. Definitely time eats up a lot of time. And what Solutions Group built is we have a direct connection with over 500 liability carriers. So think in terms of, Liberty Mutual, Allstate, State Farm, Progressive, Geico, right? So and what we're doing is we're working their systems to identify, is there an active claim that's been filed by your patient for your date of service? So essentially what comes over to Solutions Group is basic demographics. So a name, date of birth, address if you have it. If you have it, give me a social if you have it. What I'm really focused on, name, date of birth, date of service, and the state. Essentially, I take that in, and now we're looking to see, does Liberty Mutual have a liability claim that's been filed by that patient? If so, then we bring back to you all the pertinent billing information. So we've got the name of the payer, we've got the claim number, we've got the billing address for where that claim goes. And on average, I will find an active claim on 42% of the MVA and workers' comp claims that we work. And so it's a solid process. The goal of it, again, is now it's less phone calls to the patient, less requests for information to the patient, postage costs, sending statements out, waiting to hear back, call center management. I'm taking those calls. There's a more automated approach for that. The pressure cooker on all this has to do with the first provider group that uncovers this information. In most cases, they're going to be the one that will exhaust that PIP or MedPay. And so there is a clock involved. What we typically tell our clients is we like the idea of you sending a single statement or request for information to the patient as soon as it enters your system. And then you give it 10 days, 12 days, it's 14 days. If you haven't heard something back, rather than continuing to drop statements every 30 days, you'd move it into a solution like ours, where then we're going to go in electronically and identify it's an active claim they filed, bring you back the claim number and the pertinent billing information, and have you get that claim coded and out of the door. Pays a whole lot better than Medicare or Medicaid. I think you might agree with me. So first provider in who finds that information, it ends up being a nice, the differential between those two payments is pretty substantial. Why would we settle to bill Medicare or an Advantage plan when you've got the ability to go and actually build third-party liability? I also want to mention your third-party liability in a lot of cases will actually pay for your refusals. So think about, you've sent a crew out to the scene, the patient was not transported, but if it was as a result of an auto accident, some of the auto carriers on a liability claim will actually pay that fee for you. So there's a whole nother revenue source that's potentially available for you. I include a quick little scrubbing pilot on this, where this is a municipal provider in the South, where they basically had an internal process, like a lot of our clients had, where you simply were sending out a statement, then a second statement, and placing a phone call. And we took those claims and instead we ran them through our scrubbing solution, for our third-party liability. Our first step in this is we clean the demographics first. So I just want to make sure I've got the right name and the right date of birth. And then I start to work those to the liability carriers. And then when I come back on 42% of those, or in this case, 30% of theirs, they had already identified the first 12 or 15% themselves. I'm working the exceptions. I'm working the leftovers, just saying, can we identify something as maybe an opportunity to get paid and paid well, rather than having to go back and try to chase the patient down for that. So just wanted to kind of give you just a real world example of a pilot we ran last year for this. So yeah,
So on
go
the
ahead.
auto, that's one I can give you some real data on also. So just using Pro again as an example, our average patient charge is somewhere around, it's about $2,500 is our average patient charge. Our net revenue per transport on auto accidents using this solution is $2,000. Okay,
Wow.
it's amazing, right? Having a good team and implementing this solution changed everything when it comes to how the success that we have on billing motor vehicle accidents, right? I never dreamed that we would be able to be that effective with all of this, but the thing that's happening is that with this solution in place, we are getting the information quicker than the hospitals and the other people that are gonna compete against us for that first dollar. And it was implementing this solution that got us that result, right? The idea that we could collect 2,000 net revenue transport cash in the door for a car accident, I just didn't think it was possible, especially with the amount of time and energy and effort and back and forth and people not calling and it's not me and call my lawyer and all of this. That is not something that I ever thought was achievable. And those are real numbers that we are doing right now.
That is
fantastic feedback.
Yeah.
And I've got something on the deductible management too, Brian, if you want to
Sure. Yeah.
back on that for a second.
You got it.
The just to give you guys some real numbers of someone who's really using it behind it here, and Brian's sharing that stuff too. But in case you guys just go, oh, this is just some sales pitch and doesn't really work or whatever. Well, these are all numbers and stuff from us, right? And this is our deductible management report from the past year. It's not quite entirely cooked yet, because this is a report that was from back in January and there's still December claims. So there's not really a 90-day lag, but to see the results from deductible management, what Brian is saying absolutely holds true, which is that the vast majority of the claims don't end up getting held. So it does not interrupt your cash flow at all. And honestly, the ones that it does interrupt your cash flow on, where they get held, well, I would rather get the money after holding the claim than get zero gunning it out the door. I understand people's gut reaction and like, oh my God, and days in AR and we're holding claims and all of that stuff. But for this, that doesn't apply. Racing a claim out the door is not the answer, right? And that's similar to auto too, right? But this is really where racing a claim out the door isn't the answer. And for us, it really was. It turns out to be about 13% of our claims get held in deductible management, and there's really no positive, 100% way to say what the ROI is. But even if Brian is wrong by double, which he's not, our ROI on this was $644,000 last year, right? For our hard ROI, right? I mean that, and those numbers are pretty conservative, right? Because more and more, what we see, we do bill patients their deductibles, but more and more, what we get back is financial hardship for folks that are on their deductible. So wherever we can, defeat a deductible with this, it's big, and it's turned out to be a really good source of return on investment for this aspect of the deductible management. So, it's just wanted to give you guys, a real life here. Here it is. We're here. We're doing this. It's not voodoo. I know. I know that sometimes these presentations can sound like voodoo, but it's not. This stuff actually really, really actually works, if you can believe it.
I see that Shelley had a question.
Yeah, yes, Brian. Just several things to back up Bill. Mecklenburg EMS uses Solutions Group for all of these products that they have displayed today, and have been very pleased with the outcome. We recently used one of their service lines called Rev Clarity. Really, that's another service line they have that helps offset your billing office if you're a little short-staffed. It's not a long-term solution. It's just we come in and help you, and then once you feel that you're at a good place, then they exit, which has been a great solution in the time of how do we do more with less. But Brian, I did want to ask you for the people that are on the phone that may not be aware of how some of this stuff that you automate back into the systems through the APIs, or am I using my terms right?
You nailed it. Yeah.
So you might want to mention that.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you for that, Shelley. And Bill, thank you as well. Yeah. So as far as the automating the process, there's depending on what billing platform that you're on. So for example, if you're on the RescueNet platform where you've got the legacy system, Solutions Group created an app called Accelerate that literally sits on top of your system. And what it lets us do is now to extract your claims directly from schedules and events in your system. So we have a solution for that. It also lets me then come back and make a billing note, even advance the schedule or advance the event for you. So it's a fully automated solution to, again, come back. And the thought is I'll pull the claim out, I run my process, and then I'll come update your system with that information. If you're on a platform like TraumaSoft, we have an API that we've created with TraumaSoft. It works in a similar fashion where your schedules and events are used in your workflows to tell the system when to send the claim to us. And then we come back and update, TraumaSoft using the API. So there's a billing note that's added. We can advance schedules and events and things like that in your system. If you're working with TriTech, shout out to Shelley and her team at Medic. She said, we're going to find a way to get this automated. And so we were unsuccessful building a direct API with their group, but we came up with a solution using the current version of it, where there's a file that our system creates that can be auto imported into your system. And from that point, it auto updates the accounts, makes the leg notes on there. It advances the schedules and the queues inside of their system. So it is an automated solution with the one exception of there's just a file that you have to import into your import tool. And then from there, all those accounts can auto update. If you're on the Logis ESO platform, we have an API with Logis that's been in place since back in the MedStar days when Matt and his team there in Fort Worth. So we have a tool for that for the Logis system. So, and then we do a ton of proprietary systems. And so if you guys have built out your own billing system, the ability to go in and make a custom API is something we're very, very familiar with. We're not just EMS, about 65% of our business is EMS. But as we've grown into anesthesiology and some of the other healthcare verticals, we've really expanded our ability to build APIs and again, the process we want to build for you, the less touches, the better. And I can continue to increase your efficiency by not having to touch it. So love to answer any questions about that offline if anyone has any specific API questions. But yeah, so on your screen is something you can take a screenshot of, or pull your camera out if you wanted to get more information about us. In our time together, I did want to leave you with a couple of key takeaways here, just trying to leave you better than I found you if possible. So takeaway number one, that we can validate our processes by using external verifiable resource, something like a solutions group or like some of the other technologies on the market. It can do the benefit of sometimes we don't always know what we don't know. So sometimes having a verifiable source, a third party, just to work behind you to validate your process is as good as you say it is. And that's not being afraid as an industry to let's don't assume, let's challenge the assumptions and find out where can we get manual touches and clogs out of the billing process. Number two is utilize solutions that enhance and do not distract. If you've got a vendor partner you're considering, I'd make sure you're not looking at something that could come in and force you to have to reinvent your entire process that generally will have collateral damage tied to it that now frustrates your billing team. And it's like whack-a-mole. Sometimes you whack a problem and another one can come up. And so you want to look at solutions that will not distract from what you're doing. Maybe it's just to validate your process is working. To do that, though, you've got to really understand what your cost per claim looks like. If you've not done that analysis, I encourage you to take a look at your total cost tied to your billing team from soup to nuts. And then you can break that down to see on every claim that comes in on average, it's going to cost us X dollars. And then level two, you break that down and say, all right, what does my pre-bill cost me? What's coding costing me? What is my payment posting costing me? And then when you know those metrics, now you've got the ability, it can lead your strategy on the type of solution to say, would this be less expensive if I outsource this? Now I'm just using my team members for exceptions and allows you to maximize your efficiency. Last piece, your optimization requires intentionality. I always recommend you never try to fix multiple things at once. You want to be very intentional about every hire, every vendor procurement, every external audit that you have done. Be very, very intentional about each one of those pieces. And if you're looking for a partner in that, the solutions group would certainly love to have a conversation with you. And but past that, I just wanted to open it up for any questions, and we can go from there. So, please, Rob.
I've got a real hand up, not a little yellow virtual hand. I believe there's no such thing as a silly question, so that actually covers the question I'm about to ask. So anything you've discussed and covered today, Brian, is any of that hindered or confounded by states such as California, for example, that have surprise and balance billing legislation?
Good question. So when you think about something like deductibles, deductibles are not a surprise bill. A lot of times the consumer may feel like it is, but it's not a surprise bill. It's it's like their cost sharing is certainly a part of their insurance. Part of the solution that we run on deductible management, when we're looking at your insurance that your medic captured, we're actually pulling out the payer response. If there's any breadcrumb that tells you if the plan is a state regulated or a federally regulated plan, so if it's an ERISA plan, we're actually including an indicator to bring that out. I will say sadly that not all payers do it. Sometimes certain plans within payers will give you that information. They are required to. They have been required to for years, but now we're seeing more and more payers start to actually include that information. Yes, it's literally on some of the payers, it is a breadcrumb note in a random field where they might say federally funded or state regulated on some of those plans. So we wrote code just to try to identify that, bring it to the forefront, and then let your billers make that decision. So.
Yeah, I'm glad you used the word ERISA there, because in California last week we were mauled on social media over, and you may have seen the whatever you call it, the posting that somebody put up, 46,000 comments in the first couple hours on this particular bad information from the billing person, assumptions from the patient, and it went viral. So hence the question. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's to your point, Rob. I saw a article. This is last year. It was in Indiana, and it was the local reporter picked it up and said, "Why is ambulance company charging X dollars to transport a patient?" That was the whole focus. And as you dig into it, essentially it was the deductible that they were being billed for. And I thought, man, You could have avoided that whole scenario if you just, because no one questioned the facility, no one questioned what the ER doc charged, really. It came down to the ambulance provider who, I don't know, we run, we get paid on what, 6 out of 10 trips, maybe, as an industry. Some may say that's a generous number. So the thought is, how do we get it from insurance and never have to go after our patient? We're in this business because we care about the patients, but we certainly have to have margin to continue to fulfill our mission, which is what billing does.
Good. I'm glad you said that. And I want you to hold that thought, Brian, because with our joint AAA communications committee hats on, of course, we're all on, everyone's on everyone else's committees, right? Is that I've just been tapped to lead the work group to talk about the relative value of ambulance services. And so I may be quoting you there because we need to have them understand that. Thank you. I'll cede to the next question asker.
And Brian, tagging on to Rob, where there are no silly questions, they're just silly people. 2 questions, if you don't mind, and putting your binoculars on. One of the things that we're seeing more and more now are moving revenue cycle away from just transport to treatment without transport, and even further back where you're going to be potentially billing from the dispatch center. So you've dispositioned a call in the dispatch center, and now a payer is willing to pay you for that. What are your thoughts on that process 6 months from now?
That's a landfill full of mines you're asking me to walk through. Listen, I will always, me personally, I will always be of the school of thought that EMS should be prescriptive. I like the idea of it. If a provider in the facility ordered the transport and we ran that transport, that should be the end of it. My pharmacy doesn't argue with me when my physician gives me a prescription for X or for Y. But that's big picture, I think our bigger challenges now is to try to find some parity between Advantage plans and traditional Medicare. That seems to be the biggest challenge, I think, on the horizon, from a reimbursement perspective this year. But I'm open for it, right? I mean, anything we can do to guarantee payment, it's going to help lower costs. It's going to keep it where we're not having to overinflate things, but healthcare is doing that across all the verticals at this point. So that was a safe answer, Matt, but that's what I had for you.
As a man that's actually been stuck in the middle of an Argentinian minefield, remember to prod the ground ahead very carefully with your bayonet.
Yeah.
Alton's reference. Yeah.
Let it be known that Brian is on the counsel of many of us when we say, if you don't want to answer the question that was asked, answer the question that you want to ask. He did a really good job of doing that. Second question, and maybe for everybody on the call, metrics. So days to bill, not an important metric anymore. Collection percentage, not a metric anymore, not an important metric anymore. What are the top 3, 4 metrics that an RCM, whether it's in-house, outsourced, should be looking at to measure the performance of their RCM?
Yeah, great question. Without wandering too far in the weeds, net collected cash per transport obviously would have a lot to do with it. I'm more of a process guy. I start thinking about the way costs are continuing to be inflated. Yes, operationally, but also in the billing office, and really trying to nail down costs per claim and to understand what those look like. And countless conversations over the years to hear, hey, we like the idea of a scrubber, but we just can't afford it. It doesn't cost us to do it internally. It's like, well, there is a cost involved. You look at your payroll hours, look at your FTE, but if we don't really understand those costs, that's a metric that I think will drive most of the strategy to find out, might it make sense to pivot, a part of the process, even doing something like a hybrid outsourcing. Outsourcing has been a dirty word for a lot of years. But the thought it's outsourcing, a hybrid model says you're not getting rid of everything. Maybe you take a piece of the process if it's less expensive, like pre-bill, or maybe it's like doing coding to a claim. Sometimes you can outsource a portion of the process and still let your people, your well-trained team members, now they're working exceptions and they're overseeing that process. There's other ways we can pivot. Across healthcare, we see this, and hospitals doing this. We see this with emergency physicians. Those groups are face the same challenges we do in a lot of aspects, but they're being forced to say, look, there's not more reimbursement coming. Like they're trying to cut back on reimbursement. So what do we do if we can't drive more revenue? If there's not more funding coming, all right, what can we do to lower our cost for it? throw less people at it. So I think that's probably my focus on the metric side is cost per claim and what that looks like.
Yeah, the
Well,
cost
what
per
do you look
claim,
at?
the cost per claim thing is a big deal, obviously, because when you're talking about these things, there are so many bosses and ambulance owners and decision makers that I end up talking to that absolutely cannot get their head around the fact that those human beings that are spending time and energy and man hours trying to do some of the stuff that can be automated, they can't get their head around the fact that costs more than applying this kind of outsourced third-party solution. It has always boggled my mind. You know, if I went to somebody and, you know, and said, hey, this auto solution, it's X amount per claim and you can recover this, they'd be like, oh my God, that's Jesus, it's so expensive. I'm like, what could be more expensive than friggin' getting $0, dude? What's the matter with you? But that's the discussion, and that's the battle that, you know, sometimes you guys have to fight with the decision makers and the bosses in your organization. So don't be afraid to use some of these examples and say, hey, this is not just voodoo. There's real ROI here in terms of saving man hours and you know, on top of that, agita.
Yeah, we when we outsourced our billing in 2021, we had 28 people in our billing office, which was mostly female. And within the first year, we were able to actually eliminate an HR position because after you get rid of all the drama, you didn't have as many issues. So there was some additional savings because we didn't need to have 5 HR people anymore. We only needed 4. So Bill's spot on. Look at the big picture.
It's just hard for them to get their head around it, you know. For some reason, they just can't. They just think, oh, throwing people at it is cheaper, but in the end, it's not. The people are always much more expensive and harder to manage.
In some cases, harder to find.
Oh, that's actually that's true right now too. That's for sure. My God. Yeah.
All right, I don't see any other hands up, but Denise, you came off of mute. Did you have a comment or a question? Nope, guess not.
She said,
All right.
not sorry in the chat. That's what she said. So
Okay. Okay. Mr. Chairman, you want to close us out?
You know, thank you, everybody. This is a good start to a whole bunch of upcoming events that we have for specifically AIMHI users. And, you know, this is the advantage of AIMHI, that we can be on a call like this and share best practices and talk about it. And everybody on this call, you should not be bashful about calling and asking and connecting and emailing and making sure that everyone, you know, that no question goes unanswered, and that there's lots of people that are on here that are experts in all different things, you know. And I think as over the coming months of doing more and more calls like this, we'll see that, and we'll be able to rely on each other a lot more with good hard information like this that, you know, is going to absolutely be helpful in your own operation. So thank you, everybody.
I just want to say thanks for the opportunity to be here. Matt and Bill, thanks for having me on. And good to see so many friendly faces. And I want to wish you guys a great rest of your week. And thank you for what you do out there. It matters, and we value that. So thanks for the chance to be here.
All right, and Brian, once I download the video, I'll transfer a file over to you so you have the video of the meeting as well. So
Awesome. Perfect. All right, guys. Thank you so much.
Will you be at ABC 360? Is that something that you show up to, Brian?